Welcome to the Chiro Practice Insights podcast. This is Sebastian Mueller. In today's episode, I'm excited. I'll be talking with Jenn Troy. She's a retired clinic director and CA for a chiropractic clinic, turns business owner whose team handles meaningful conversations for holistic practitioners. She's wildly passionate about finding patients better healthcare and doing so by working with chiropractic clinics. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Me too. So let's get started with you just sharing maybe the bullet pointed version of your story and why you do what you do.
Yeah, thanks for allowing me to. So, clinic director at a very successful practice, and I saw patients transforming their lives. So my story begins at that office. I worked there for several years and just fell in love with the chiropractic profession. If I was a little younger, I might have even gone back to be a chiropractor, but that ship has sailed. So I had to move away from the practice. And because I loved helping patients so much, like that was really what made every day worth it to go into the practice and see the transformation. So I had to move away, states away from the practice. And I started working remotely for the doctor I was working for. But then one of the marketing agencies that we were working with for the office caught wind that I was working remotely and doing some things virtually with lead follow-up and lead nurturing and appointment scheduling. And they asked me, wait a second, we know you. We know how you are. We know how you feel about patients. Can you do this for more offices? And that's really how the Troy method was born. I said, heck yes, because I get to impact not just the patients in our practice anymore, but my reach was much farther if I started saying yes to other offices. So it's been a great couple of years so far.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, do you mind sharing a little bit of like what you all do differently or maybe that makes you unique compared to others who might be doing the same thing in the same space?
Yeah. So we typically get related to as a call center, right? Like we're the team who's picking up the phone and calling the patients to book the appointments from the marketing efforts that the clinics are spending dollars on. I don't know about the listeners and you, but whoever really gets a good thought in their mind when you hear the words call center. I really do like to be the opposite of that, the antithesis of that. We have highly skilled team members. And I know every business can say that. My team has worked in practices, so many of them, not all of them, but so many of them have actually worked in offices. And I think that's one of the many things that would set us apart in this space. You have to, not only about working in practices, but you really have to care and have a mission of helping patients get well. And my team does that and cares about it hands down, just as much as I do, if not more. You don't find that in other call teams. I've looked, I've watched, I've paid attention. That is absolutely the differentiator. We as a team collectively want to make an impact for patients. And again, we get to do that by working with the clinics. So arguably our mission in getting patients to chiropractors as opposed to drugs and surgeries and maybe some other practitioners' offices they would go to, that 100% sets us apart in what we do.
That's awesome. And you're right. The term call center doesn't really feel like it does justice to you and your team. How would you describe your company?
Ooh, that's a good question. So we call ourselves like fearless patient educators, kind of forging a different path in the call center, the call team space. We are not just on the phones trying to book appointments. We are having those meaningful conversations you mentioned. We're showing empathy. We're showing the care for the patients and working them through that day zero that you and I have talked about. Like what happens before the patient ever hits the door? What experience are they having? What's going to make them want to come to this office over the office down the street? So I say that we're fearless patient educators because we get on the phones and we have some really good and sometimes disrupting conversations with patients where we're telling them things they may never have heard before. Like they don't, we're not the doctor, but there are other solutions besides going and getting drugs. And they may be a good candidate. They just don't know that yet. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say you find most exciting about having meaningful conversations with new patient leads and working with chiropractors?
We talk about this a lot on our team meetings because, again, we have to, as a culture for my team, to set us apart from just being every other call team. So What excites us the most is truly knowing that if we're having those conversations with that patient and they book an appointment in the practice, that could be literally changing the trajectory of what happens to that patient's health. I believe that thoroughly because of what I saw working in a practice. I knew if they started care at our office and they followed their recommendations as a patient, we can't do it for them. If they followed their recommendations, they were going to get healthier. They were going to feel better. And that is what excites us. We talk about that at almost every team meeting that we know. We just celebrated last month, 1,000 patients were impacted by the number of appointments that we booked.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What would you say are some common challenges that your chiropractor clients face?
Oh, wow. Well, it depends on what part of the process. So, in our world, I would say some of the challenges we find would be that the patients coming into the practice, I would say they're struggling to potentially educate them and convert them to care in many ways. I think while we may have those conversations and help them understand what's going to happen at that first visit, I think sometimes the challenge is actually getting the patient to value the care that they're getting once they hit the door at the office and really understanding how to educate them just a little bit more to get them to want to be lifelong patients. Something I see across the board. I'd love to figure out how to move that needle.
Yeah, would you say that you find something lacking in that first conversation for a lot of offices?
Once the patient hits the door, yeah, and our job is essentially done. When they're in the practice, we find that a lot of patients might be showing up and not enough people are converting to care. So much of the time we hear financial concerns or whatever the case, but I don't know that I always agree with that. I think it's trying to be a little disruptive of the patient has this $1,200 iPhone in their hands, but they're saying they can't afford care in the practice. And in our practice, we cared so much about the patients that we were willing to kind of tell them that. Like, you have the Benz sitting outside in the parking lot, but you're telling us you can't afford care. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about what some of the challenges are that I see with the clinics today.
Yeah, when you talk about not having the money or whatever, it reminds me of just not having enough time. We all have the same amount of time. It's just a matter of how you prioritize its use.
Well, and the other challenge I would say, as it relates to our team specifically, their staff doesn't have enough time to do what we do, right? So when marketing leads are coming in, so often the staff, not that they're not good staff, I don't want to knock staff, right? They're wearing a lot of hats. And so the dollars that the offices are spending on their marketing are like getting lit by a match and burning up because their staff doesn't have the time to follow up with the leads the way they need to. I see that as another, obviously, that's why I do what I do. There's a gap there that consistently is a challenge for offices that we love to be able to fill.
Wow. Yeah. Super helpful. What would you say are maybe some actionable insights or tips that you can share with the chiropractic community who may not even know what they don't know about following up with or the day zero experience with those new patient leads?
Yeah. So day zero, again, we're talking about that as like the experience the patient is having before they even come in for that day one, that new patient exam, before they ever step foot into the office. Tips I would say is it's constant communication with your staff. So if I'm a doctor and I run a clinic or I'm a clinic director, I'm an office manager, I need to help my staff understand the value of leads. The tip I would give is getting back to them fast. So if you have to continue to talk to your staff about those things because they're wearing many hats, you have to make sure that they're prioritizing this particular piece accordingly. So the number one advice I can give is if you're spending dollars on marketing, make 100% sure you know what's happening as soon as that lead comes into your funnel, your CRM, wherever they're coming into, make sure there's some solid systems in place. Speed to lead is one of those things. Pick up the phone and call right away. The second tip I would say is you have to make sure you have the right people on the phones. The team members on the other end have to have the A for attitude mindset when they get on the phones. They cannot be treating it like it's just another task they have to complete and try to hurry through and check off their list. I've seen this so many times. They have to clear away the stress of the day and get on these because leads don't know you well enough yet right? And so we're trying to elevate that experience with them before they come in. You have to have the right person on the phone doing that. So that's a tip. But the second tip, along with that tip, is you have to be monitoring what is actually happening. You can't assume that person you have on the phone is doing it right. Role play with them, listen to their calls. There's a process. Those are a couple tips. I could probably keep going.
Those are definitely great. And you mentioned speed to lead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, absolutely got called back the same day, right?
Yeah, 5-10 minutes max. Like in today's world, we all do it. We're scrolling. If we're talking about social media ads out there, we're scrolling, we see an ad, we're in the moment, we click the ad, we want that thing now. If I don't hear from anybody in 5 hours, I'm probably going to have moved on, not even thinking about it anymore, and potentially saying, never mind. Yeah, it was a good idea at the time. You have to get them quickly. So it's not that same day. No, it's 5-10 minutes max. And then they've gone on to other things. A lot of the times what we see that when we step into an account, we start working leads and we go back and kind of do some audits, the time gap is tremendous. And that's typically why they don't schedule.
Yeah, we've seen the same thing.
Yes.
And you made a good point about the person handling the call. And I have to imagine a lot of the offices, the person is really good with patience and has that empathy, if you will, or else they probably wouldn't be there very long. However, there's something to be said, I would say, for how you either take time or handle that conversation with someone who doesn't have any rapport built up versus someone who's been coming to the office and knows the office and trusts the office when they pick up that phone.
Yeah. And it's funny, though. I've seen a lot of staff who, like you said, well, if they didn't have that empathy, they wouldn't be there very long. I've seen staff that doesn't, and they've been there too long. I've worked with a lot of offices, hundreds of offices over the last 3.5 years since I started my business. And that is why teaching staff is something that I'm working towards being a part of an offer for the Troy method, is because I feel like staff don't get the proper training. And it's not that they can't have the empathy. I just don't know that the time is spent on them that they need. So yeah, it takes time to get the right person. You have to be there as a business owner, as the doctor, as a clinic manager. You have to be there kind of making sure that the right people are doing it for you.
It makes sense. Well, and I think about almost any job, really. First, you have to hire the person with the right attributes and traits and innate ability to do the work. But then pretty much any person is going to need some sort of training and skill refining and practice and feedback in how they do that work.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. How would you say you see things progressing in the near future as it relates to maybe lead follow-up or speaking to new patients for the chiropractic community?
It's interesting because I'm in a space and time where I'm seeing the need grow. I'm seeing so many offices seeking this out as a service outside of what their staff can do. But some of the things that we talk about a lot in our space, marketing and the lead file and then conversion, is AI. I see that potentially progressing with AI being able to have these conversations. But I'm not an AI naysayer. I think there's a time and a place. I don't think it's ready for a clinic to want to have it take over their communication with patients just yet. There's AIs out there that sound fairly human-esque, and there's text conversational bots that are happening out there. We've seen them crash and burn, and we've seen patients negatively react to those. So I see a future with a little bit more of that built in, but I see also that patients now more than ever want humans to stay a part of their conversation, especially as it relates to their health. So I think that us as humans and that those meaningful conversations aren't going away anytime soon. So I caution people to want to jump into this AI, that it's the way and you don't need people anymore. Yeah, it's my business, but I would argue that patients don't want that. They don't want that yet. We're not there yet. So I see more meaningful conversations and more of us needing to be in the world to help educate patients and make them feel good about the decisions they're making for their health.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky space. Working with chiropractors, we're working in the health space. I mean, they're businesses, right? And they have all the business functions, but at the same time, we're talking about helping people. And there's a lot of more constraints and restrictions as it relates to health, not just HIPAA, but giving health advice or health answers or, yes, we can fix that type of thing. And so I'm a lover in technology and that sort of thing and AI, but I think there's a time and place for things. And I agree with the, automated answers. I would hate to see it give health advice,
Yep.
you know, trying to
Yeah.
answer a question when that's not the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And even us on the phones, we're not giving health advice. We're very cautious about staying compliant. And that is not our role. Our role is to help them understand that they're making a good decision to come into the office, that they could be a good fit, but the practitioner and the staff in the office is going to be able to be the ones to help them with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't diagnose without actually seeing the patient.
Yes. 100%. Yes.
Awesome. Well, before we sign off, do you have any other final advice maybe that you want to share with the chiropractic community or anything we might have missed going over?
I just go back to if I'm just thinking like right now in the moment, not prepped. I am prepped, but not prepped, right? About what I'm passionate about. Don't l- leave no new lead left behind. I think
Hmm.
that's super important. So we're in this space of you want to spend dollars on marketing, but you also tend to want to complain that they're not quality leads. So much of the time, they're not getting the nurturing and the care that they need when you do have them coming into your system. So again, I go back to it's so important not to leave the leads left behind. Don't throw dollars at something and hope patients just magically show up. It is so important to have a very specific process in place of who's going to take that responsibility on when you're starting to market to leads. That is so critical because I feel like it's literally leaving patients left behind and not helping the ROI at all when they're trying to spend dollars on marketing to have it all, kind of go up in smoke. So make sure those systems are in place and you're doing all the things that you can before you just question the quality of the lead. So many a times when we step in, we don't see that as the issue. We see the internal workings and the lack of the follow-up was the actual issue. So there are good solutions out there. I think so often doctors and staff get jaded by all the marketing options out there. Companies like Sebastian's, they're hard to find. I get it, but they're out there. And so I think it's important not to give up on the marketing either, because I do think it's a necessity to have your ecosystem of marketing fully operating the way it needs to. So that would be the first things that come to my heart when I think about what final message I can give.
Yeah, that's really brilliant. And when I think about what you were saying too, with the lead quality and things like that, that's one of the inputs. But there's a lot of inputs that produce the output, which is
Yeah.
a patient coming in that truly wants the help and wants to get better.
The other thing I think about, and I'll forget if I don't say it now, you and I think, had this discussion not too long ago, is the other thing that adds to that is you can't just market to cold, ice cold leads, right? Social media is like that low hanging fruit that everybody wants to market to, but you also have to have other variables in place to make those social media leads just a little bit warmer. Things like awareness in your community and who you are, and are you posting organically, and all the things you probably heard that you're supposed to be doing. Again, it's a marketing ecosystem. It's not just one thing with marketing. And I think that's important to note, is that you can't just run cold ads necessarily and see the results that you want to see. You have to have more irons in the fire.
For sure. People need to be a little more aware of how, chiropractic for that matter could help them as well as the office,
Yeah, absolutely.
as opposed to just kind of trying to pull people in from lead generation, if you will.
Yeah.
I find that people do business, and same even applies to healthcare, with people, not some abstract entity, logo, business name, but the doc. Look at all the reviews out there for a chiropractor's office, and they don't reference the company very often. It's typically the doctor's name. It's a mix, but it's the doc. It's the individual person's ability, because as one client mentioned to me one time, chiropractors are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Sure. Yeah. They're not all
And
created equal, for sure. They're all different. Yeah, absolutely. And it is more about the people and the experience that the patient has than it is the business name that's out there. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, right, I haven't had the experience in the chiropractic space so much, fortunately. However, been to many medical offices, right, and dental offices, et cetera. And a lot of times that front desk or the office manager is like a barrier. It's like the provider is great, But I can definitely say there's been some experiences where we haven't gone back due to that front desk experience. So every single person and every single conversation, matters.
It does. And that brings up a good point. In my course, I teach that where I have a slide that says every conversation from every point of contact of all your marketing channels and all your efforts end up coming through the front desk. And it's teaching. So my course teaches the staff how to do what we do internally. And I'm trying to help them understand the buck stops at that front desk. That's where the wow factor has to happen on the day zero. If it's not a service like us, right, taking over those initial conversations, it has to happen with that front desk. Typically, that's who's making these calls. And it has to continue to happen once they walk in the door, because that wow factor, we used to call it in our office, and that first impressions really does matter, especially in today's world. I think so many people want a good experience right off the cuff. So every conversation, every marketing effort goes through that barrier, that front desk first. So make it great, make it memorable, make it different from other offices by you. Yeah.
And I would even say one differentiator probably is even like just taking the time to hear, connect with a person. When I think of some smaller offices where maybe there's only one other person besides the doc, and it's like they're juggling everything from submitting insurance, billing, and updating records and dealing with the people in front of them, that taking like the extra couple minutes to just have a really good conversation
Yes.
probably is really hard.
Yeah, it can be. Absolutely. And I think that that's another thing is you got to take the time. It's hard to stop in the busy life, but I agree with you. Yeah, the time when you're busy and you're wearing those multiple hats in the office, it's just important to just be in the moment. And our office, and this is like counterintuitive to what we're saying about speed to lead, but we had other ways to make that happen. Our front office could not answer the phone when they were in shift with patients because we wanted them to be hyper present for the people in front of them. The phones can wait. We wanted to be in the moment with the people in front of us. That's a really, really good point you bring up. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone you're interacting with, right? Phone or in person, they should be the only person that you are worrying about at that given moment. And you just said something about the phones can wait. And I think about some offices, or probably most offices, how they close for a few hours in the middle of the day. And they don't answer those calls, or if they are with someone, they aren't picking it up necessarily. And there's a lot of times where you're doing maybe even Google ads and people are actively calling from the ad. And I mean, so every single call, if you miss that, good luck. They're just calling the next one on the list.
Yes, absolutely. Especially when it comes to something like Google. Yeah. So like our office, we had other people in place outside of the front desk like us who would make sure that those phones were getting answered and the leads were getting followed up with. So their front desk could focus on what they needed to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Can you mind telling the listeners how they can find or the best way to connect with you?
Yeah. Website is always the best to learn more. That's www.thetroymethod.com. That's always the best way. I do free lead audits and free strategy sessions. You can always book a call with me there. But I'm on Facebook, Jenn Troy. Find me. I'd love to connect and chat. Those are the two best ways.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today, Jenn Troy. We'll make sure to link to your website in the show notes in case anyone wants to take a closer look at that or talk to you. I highly encourage people to talk to you. And the other things we covered today by going to growyourchiropractice.com and going to the podcast section. Thanks again, Jenn. So good talking to you.
You too. Thanks. I appreciate you having me.